Hi, my name is Simon Tansman, and I'm part of Kcura's instructional design team. Today, I will be spending the next hour or so running you through some basic reviewer functionality here in Relativity. We know that it's tough to get away from your regular work, so we appreciate you taking the time to be here for us for this lesson. The purpose of this training is to familiarize you with some of the key functionality that you'll use in document review in Relativity 9.5. The training itself is divided into 7 modules, with each module representing a common review task. For each module, we'll use a combination of discussion and demonstration to highlight the Relativity features, tools, or workflows available to help you perform the task at hand. The modules that we'll be covering today are Getting Started, Navigating Case Documents, Analyzing Data, Reviewing Your Documents, Coding Your Documents, Visualizing Email Threads, and Applying Redactions. During this webinar, we'll be showcasing some of the newest features available in Relativity 9.5. If you do not use Relativity 9.5, we offer recorded versions of the Relativity Reviewer Training webinar on previous versions of Relativity. These can be found on our Training Center on the On Demand section. Okay, let's dive into our first module, Getting Started. In this module, we'll discuss the items that you need to keep in mind when first getting started with Relativity, such as browser compatibility and user security. After that, we'll log in and look at some of the features available to help you get acclimated quickly to the layout of Relativity. So what is Relativity Review? Relativity Review is a web-based application that is used to review electronic documents for litigation. It's supported in Internet Explorer, Safari, Chrome, and Firefox in the versions that you see there on the screen. Relativity Review is a very powerful application with many review features and tools. To be a successful Relativity reviewer, it's important that you familiarize yourself with both the terminology and functionality for each one of the interfaces that we'll navigate through today. At a high level, Relativity can be divided into 3 interfaces: Relativity Home Mode, the Case Workspace, and the Core Reviewer interface. Throughout the webinar, I will be sure to point out which interface that we're in. Please note that all features in Relativity are secureable and customizable by your case manager and will depend on your specific case and indicated workflows. This means that you may or may not have access to see or interact with all the features that we cover today. Alright, let's talk about logging in. To log into Relativity, you'll need to use the credentials assigned to you by your case admin. Typically, your username is going to be your email address followed by a distinct password. Relativity requires strong passwords that meet all the requirements that you see listed here. The passwords need to be at least 8 characters long. They need to be mixed case, so 1 uppercase and 1 lowercase. They need to have at least 1 number and at least 1 non-alphanumeric character. So for example, the password that you see here, training1! is a password that Relativity would accept. You can see that it has mixed case, you can see that it includes a number, you can see that it has a non-alphanumeric character, and you can see that it is at least 8 characters long. To log in, you'll simply enter your username, click Continue, and then enter your password and click Continue again. Once logged in, you'll be directed to Relativity Home Mode. Alright, let's switch over to Relativity and take a look at Home Mode. You can see here that we've logged into Relativity, and we are now looking at Relativity Home. You can consider this the base camp of the Relativity environment. Here, admins will have many options for managing the entire instance, and as a reviewer, you'll be able to access the workspaces that you need to do the document reviews that you're involved in. In the upper right corner, notice the Hi Reviewer link. If you click this link, this displays the User drop-down menu. Now, depending on your permission level, the User drop-down menu may include the option to navigate back to Home Mode, to reset your password, to change your personal settings, such as your name and email address, or to log out of Relativity. So you can see that I have some of those options here. I can reset my password, and I can change some of my user settings right here. And here I can go to Log Out. To the left of the User drop-down menu, you'll find the Favorites icon. If you use this icon, you can bookmark a page that you visit frequently by clicking the star right here. So you can see by doing that, I have now actually marked this page right here as a favorite location. And if I then click the favorites link here, you can see that the workspaces, all workspaces view in admin or home mode is now one of my favorites, and I can quickly return to it at any time from any screen by just clicking this link here. This also remembers my last few pages that I visited, so you can see here are the last pages that I was viewing here in Relativity. So I can quickly return to a location that I was previously if I needed to step away to, say, go to a meeting or go to lunch. To the right of the user dropdown is our quick nav menu. If I click on this here, you can use this to quickly locate other locations within Relativity. So all I have to do is start typing a location, and the system will tell me potential locations within Relativity that match this. So you can see here, if I type salt, I am directed to these two workspaces that contain the word salt in them. At the top left of the screen, and going across the entire top here, this blue section is what we call the tab strip. And this allows you to navigate and access different Relativity features. As a reviewer here in home mode, we just have access to the Workspaces tab. If we were an admin, we would have many other tabs that would let us manipulate some of the larger settings in this instance. But from this tab, you can see that we just see all the workspaces that we have access to. So right now we have access to these two workspaces here. Any other workspaces that we were given access to would also show up here on this list. Now, a workspace is a secure data repository for all the documents that are used in a case. Now, depending on your particular workload, you may see one workspace or you may see many workspaces listed here. To open one of these workspaces and begin our review work, I just have to click on the name of that workspace. So I'm going to open the Salt versus Pepper workspace, as this is the workspace that we need to enter for today. And now we're looking at the case workspace, and from here we can access the documents that we need to review in this case. And this gets us to our second module, Navigating Case Documents. In this module, we'll look at some of the key ways to interact with and display the documents in the case workspace. For this, we are going to be using one of those interfaces that we discussed at the beginning. This is the case workspace interface. So workspaces are used to organize and categorize, search, and review your important case documents. And the case workspace interface that you're seeing here is organized into 7 different components that will help you to do just that. So throughout this webinar, we're going to interact with most of these as we go along. So for now, I'm just going to point out the areas that are most important for navigating your case documents, and then you'll see these in action as we progress through. So the first thing that you might notice is that all of your documents are displayed in this big section in the middle of the screen. This is your document list, and this is the central location for viewing and acting on your documents. Above the document list and to the right is the document set information bar, and this controls how the searchable set of documents is displayed within the document list. You can navigate through the documents page by clicking on those navigation arrows that you're seeing there on the far right-hand side of that section. Now, directly above the document list is the view bar. Now, views are customizable lists of items in Relativity. They're generally created by your admins, although certain users might have the permission to create their own. And these lists will return a set of items based on specific criteria. So in this case, these views are returning lists of documents, and they're determining the criteria under which those documents should be returned. So should these be all documents, or do we maybe only want to see the documents that are in any batches that are assigned to me? These can all be done with views. And views also control the columns that are returned. So you can see this view is showing us, say, the control number, the custodian, sent date, etc. But we could show different pieces of metadata if we wanted. Some common views that a reviewer might see might be a all documents view. That's what we're seeing here. You might see a view that will just show you your checked out documents and your batches. And you might also see an email thread view that shows email threads listed together, and we'll actually see one of those later on in this session. The left of the document list is the browser. And using this pane, you can browse through your documents and interact with them in different ways. There's multiple different browsers within Relativity, and you can switch between them by selecting those icons on top of the folder tree there. So right now we're on the folders browser, and next to it you can see that we have access to the saved searches browser. These are pretty common ones for a reviewer to have access to. Now, in some cases, depending on your security, you may not have access to see either of these. So we have these two, but other reviewers might have more. There are more, and other reviewers may not see any at all. I also want to point out the tab strip at the top of the screen. If you remember, in home mode, we also had this, and we just had that workspaces tab. Now that we're inside the workspace, we see different tabs, but the idea is the same. So these tabs let us access different items within Relativity. You can see that based on our security here, we have access to two tabs. We have the Documents tab, and that tab shows us the documents. And then we also have the Review Batches tab. We'll navigate to that in a little bit, and that tab will list all the different review batches that have been set up by our case administrators. If we had different security, we might see any number of different tabs. In your environment, you may have different tabs that you see as well. The final areas I want to mention are the search panel and the pivot, widgets, and dashboards areas. These areas provide tools for you to analyze your data set. We're going to interact with these a little bit more later on, so you'll understand a bit more about what's going on when we actually get to that section. This brings us to Module 3, Analyzing the Data. In this module, we'll look at the searching and reporting tools Relativity offers to help you quickly evaluate your data set and cull down the number of documents that you need to review. Let's start with searching. Relativity includes several flexible search features designed to facilitate the document review process. These easily accessible features support a range of searching needs, from something simple like filtering on metadata fields up to the development of complex search queries. Relativity offers the following search features for reviewers. You got filtering, search conditions, and several index searching tools such as keyword search, DT search, and Lucene search. Let's switch to Relativity and look at how to run some searches. All right, I've returned us to our salt versus pepper workspace, and now you can understand a little bit more about some of the things that are going on the screen here based on our previous discussion. So let's start talking about how to use some of those searching tools to find the documents that we need. To start off, we'll use one of the most simple tools that we have, and that is filtering. Filtering allows you to filter on document metadata or on the information that you're seeing displayed in the various columns on the document list here. Let's say that I know documents falling between the date range of, say, May 1st, 2001 to May 15, 2001 could contain some very hot information. Since I know this specific metadata information, I can use filtering to quickly cull down my document list and find documents that are within that date range. So let's do that. I'm first going to turn on my filters by clicking the Show Hide Filters icon here. Now, just a note, for demonstration purposes, we had this start off, but you actually have as a setting, you can make it so that these are turned on by default, so you don't even need to do what I just did there. Now, I want to filter for documents that are in various sent dates, so I'm going to use that sent date field here. So I'll click in the filter box here. Now, because this is a date field, Relativity gives me this calendar picker here, so I'm able to quickly specify the dates that I want to find here. Right now, the operator that we're using is, but in our scenario, we didn't want to find documents that were sent on a certain date. We were looking for a range. So I'm going to change my operator to the between operator. Now I'll enter those two dates that I want to search for. I could page through the calendar here, or I could just directly type the dates in here, which is what I will do. All right, and the second date that I wanted was May 15th of the same year. And now I can click Apply. Now, as you can see, when I do that, our document list has been filtered down, and now we're seeing only about 3,800 documents here. And these are just the documents, as you can see here, that have a sent date that are between those two dates that we just entered here. What's nice as well is, as you can see over here, the condition that we added there is actually added as a condition over here, so we can quickly see what is filtering down our document list here. So we can see that right now we are filtering the sent date field to find everything that was sent between May 1st, 2001 and May 15, 2001. In addition to filtering using the different columns that we have here, we can also add a condition directly to this filter panel over here, which is useful if we want to filter on a piece of information that isn't displayed in one of these columns that we have in the view up here. So let's say, for example, that we also wanted to see documents that had redactions added to them. Now, we don't have that as a column in the view here, but I can just easily click Add Condition, and I can find the field that I need. I'll use the Type Ahead field here. These are the ones that were flagged as needing redactions. When I do that, it will pop up the filter options up here. And in this case, we do want our operator to be is, and we want our value to be yes. So I'll choose that and then click Apply. And once I do that, I will click Run Search down here. And you can see that now we're down to just 4 documents. We have 4 documents that meet both of these criteria. They both were sent in that particular date range and had been flagged by somebody as needing redactions. Now notice that when we did that and we added that new needs redaction filter, I had to click Run Search again. You also have the option to have the system just automatically rerun those searches every time you add these new filter conditions. To do that, you just flip the Auto Run Search toggle here to Yes, which I will do. Now when I do that, if I was to add a new condition card here, the system would automatically run. I wouldn't have to click that Run Search button again. And in fact, you can see that the Run Search button actually vanishes because I don't even need to use that anymore. Now, if you have complex search conditions, you may want to keep this toggled off because otherwise, each time you add a new condition, the system will update your list there, and that could end up becoming tedious or affect performance. Now that I have my auto run search set to on, if I remove this needs redaction condition, you'll see that the list will automatically update to reflect this. So if I go here, the system automatically reruns the search, and I'm returned to that original list of 3,800 documents. If I wanted to also get rid of the sent date filter, I could click the X there in the same fashion, or if I wanted to just reset the list entirely, I can click Clear All Conditions, and this will clear everything off of there, and this list will reset to whatever the initial conditions of the view up here were. Now that you've seen the search panel in action, let's talk about another one of our searching tools, and that is index searching. Indexing provides a powerful way for users to search on the contents of documents by allowing you to apply specific search syntax and find information that you're looking for within the documents themselves. As we talked about before, Relativity has several different search indexes available to you, such as keyword searching, DT searching, Lucene searching, and, if configured, analytics concept searching. Index searches are all run in the exact same way in Relativity, so I'll run through one and you'll get a sense of how do you run any one of these different indexes. To run any search, I'll click Add Condition, the same as if I was adding one of those filters like I added before, and I'm going to choose the Index Search option, which is right at the top of the list. Now, when I do that, again, I have the option to configure the search that I'm going to run here, and you can see in this index field up here, if I click the drop down, I have a couple of different options. Based on how the workspace is set up, I'll have different indexes available to me here. So you can see in this workspace, I have keyword search, I have DT search, and I have analytics available to me. Now notice that based on what I select here, there will be different options that will appear here. So if I click DT search, you can see this dictionary link appears. And if I was to click analytics, you can see that now this is called concepts, and now I have these other options here. So these options are specific to these particular types of index searches, and the window will automatically update itself based on the one that you select. I'm going to go ahead and return us to keyword search. And I'm going to run a quick keyword search here. And I'm going to search for gas and energy. Keyword search has a couple of built-in Boolean operators such as and or. So what you're seeing here is a search that's going to find all documents that have the term gas and the term energy. And so when I click apply, auto run search is on, so it runs it for us automatically. And you can see that our document list has been filtered down to about 1,900 documents here. And these are all the documents that contain both those terms gas and the term energy. Once I'm done looking at this filtered list here, as before, I can just click Clear All Conditions, and that'll remove that filter card and reset the document list. It's important to note that a successful index search isn't so much dependent on performing the mechanical steps as it is your familiarity with the search index's specific syntax, principles, and functionality. If you're interested in learning more about these different types of index searches within Relativity and what different features they offer, we have a lot of different searching documentation available and a couple of other on-demand videos that you can refer to as well. Another way to analyze your data is using some of our reporting functionality. There are two main reporting tools that we'll talk about here, and that is pivots and dashboards, and these two tools work together, as you'll see. So a pivot is a type of Relativity widget that allows you to analyze data and reveal trends and patterns within a case. With pivots, you can create tables and charts to visually summarize and to simplify the analysis process. And dashboards, on the other hand, allow you to customize how documents are displayed within the UI using a combination of that document list like we saw before and various pivot charts. Advanced reviewers or admins can use these dashboards to gain insight into document metadata, to manage review workflows, and to gauge progress. Let's jump back to Relativity and see how these two tools can be used to help us analyze our data. Once again, we're back in our salt versus pepper workspace, and we're looking at all the documents in our workspace. Now let's say I want to analyze which custodians in our case have the most documents in our data set. To do that, I'm going to add a pivot. So I will go to up here, and I'm going to click Add Widget. So let's configure our pivot chart settings here. So we wanted to see which custodians had the most documents, so I'm going to choose Group By, and I'm going to group by the custodians field. And just as with the filter cards, we have a little type ahead box here, so I'm going to choose custodians. Now when I do that, you can see that a new field appears, the Group By Results Returned. It defaults to all. Now what this is doing is it lets us filter the results that we get so that instead of showing us all results, it'll show us only a particular range. So you can see here that we have the all options selected by default. If I select top, a numeric box will appear. If I was to type, say, 5 there, what this is going to do is instead of showing me how many documents every single custodian in my workspace has, this is just going to show me how many documents the top 5 custodians in my workspace have. So this can be very useful if I have charts that have a very long tail. It can make these charts much easier to read by filtering off some of those other pieces of information that might not be as important. You could still view them if you don't want to use this and just choose that all feature. But this way we can have a chart that's a little easier on the eyes and lets us see what we actually want to see. Now, we're only going to leave pivot on grand total, but for more advanced charts, we can use pivot on to give us some more in-depth information. For now, we'll just leave it on grand total, and you'll see what that looks like. And let's choose our default display type. It starts out as bar chart, but let's switch it over to a pie chart and see what that looks like. Now, I'm going to click Add Pivot. And when I do that, you can see we have a Count of Custodians widget that appears here. I can move this around as needed. So if I click it, I can drag it over here. I could drag it here or drag it back here. I can also adjust it so that it spans the screen. I can make it bigger here, and you can see it pushes the document list down and it resizes itself in real time. What's really nice too is that this widget can also help me to interact with my document list. So if I was to click, see the large blue slice here, which you can see if I mouse over it corresponds to K Mann's documents. And you can see that of the top 5 custodians, she has 49.6% of them. If I click on that, you can see that it actually adds a filter card over here so that we're now filtering for K Mann's documents. And down here in the document list, we are now seeing only K Mann's documents. To get rid of that, just as before, I'm going to click Clear All Conditions, and that will get rid of that filter card, and it will reset my chart and the document list. Pivots are very flexible, and you can use them to visualize any type of metadata in your document set. If you'd like to review the information offline, you can also do that with widgets because you can actually export the information that you're seeing in a pivot to Excel or to a PNG file. To do this, all I got to do is select the pivot configuration menu up here, and I would click the export either Excel or export PNG file here. And if I do that, you can see that down here we have the PNG of our widget that appears here. And you can see if I open it up, voila, that's the exact same widget that we were seeing before. I'm done with this pivot, so I'm going to remove it now. So I'm going to click the menu again here, and I'm going to choose to remove. And you can see the document list maximized itself back up there. Now sometimes your case admin might go ahead and prepare a customized page with specific pivot widgets and information for you to reference quickly. These are known as dashboards. Case admins can save and prepare multiple dashboards in one workspace and allow users to quickly switch between them to see different sets of information based on their specific needs at the time. So if I click the dashboards drop down here, you can see that I'm currently on the documents dashboard. Since I was applying changes and I added a widget and then removed it, you can see that it's asked me if I want to save those changes to this dashboards here. Now as a reviewer, I don't really have the actual ability to do that, so I'm not actually going to bother saving any changes here. Now you can see that in addition to the documents dashboard, we also have a data analysis dashboard. So if I click that, now notice that this dashboard contains 3 different widgets along with the document list, which you can see if I scroll down here. You can see they also have appeared in a very specific configuration. So you can see we have these 2 over here, and we have our same count per custodian widget smooshed off to the side over here. If I want to interact with this, I could do the same as I did before, and I could click on any of them. So I could, for example, I could go here and I could filter for particular sent dates. Or in a similar way, I could filter my by custodians right here. And just as before, you can see that everything updates in response to the selection that I've made right there. If you have permission to do so, you might also have the option to export the entire dashboard in an Excel spreadsheet by clicking the export button that appears to the right of the dashboard dropdown. But in our case, we don't have permissions to do that, so we will not. And I'm just going to switch us back to that documents dashboard, which just has the basic document list. All right, let's move on and discuss viewing your documents so you can actually do your review workflows with our 4th module here. In this module, we'll look at how to check out and view a set of documents called a batch, and then we'll open a document and discuss the various tools available for viewing your documents in the Core Reviewer interface. So with that said, let's jump over into Relativity and take a look at how this works. Before a review begins, your case administrator may create batches or sets of documents and assign them out to different reviewers. And this assures that each reviewer is only looking at the documents that are assigned to them specifically. If a batch has been assigned to you for review, you can review those documents by switching to the My Checked Out Documents view. So from the Case Workspace interface here, I'm going to select that view from the View Selection menu here. Now I can see that a batch of documents has been assigned to me and it's displayed here. So these are the documents that are in that specific batch. You can see that we're only looking now at 39 documents as opposed to the over 70,000 documents that we have in this workspace as a whole. In addition to having batches assigned to me by an administrator, I could also check batches out to myself if I have the right permissions, and in this case, I do have the right permissions. So I'm going to go to the Review Batches tab, and you can see a list of different batches that have already been created in this workspace. You can see that the 3rd batch here is currently in progress, and it's been assigned to the reviewer trainer. That happens to be me. So that's the batch that we're actually seeing back over on the document list. And in fact, you can see that there's those 39 documents that we were seeing when we were viewing just the document list. Now let's say that I completed reviewing these 39 documents that are in that 3rd batch there, and I would like to check this batch back in. To do that, I'm going to click the Edit link next to the batch here. And I have 2 options. I can check it in as pending, or I can check it in as completed. Since we're going to say that I have completed my review, I'm going to check it in as completed, so I'll click that button there. And you can see when I do that, that the batch status now reads as completed. Now, when I look at this batch list, you can see that 2 of them have blank statuses. That means that they're currently inactive and therefore are available for somebody to review. So let's say I want to check one of these out to myself and continue on my work now that I've finished reviewing the other batch. So let's click the edit link next to the first one there, and I'm going to click check out. And when I do that, you can see that the batch now has a status of in progress, just as the previous one had, and you can see that it has been assigned to myself. Now I'm going to return to the Documents tab, and then I can actually start reviewing those documents. So you'll notice that I'm still on the My Checked Out Documents view, but you can see down here that now, instead of those 39 documents, I have the documents that are in this batch. Let's open up the first document on the list, and this will begin our review. We are now looking at the core reviewer interface. This is the third of those 3 interfaces that we discussed previously. And let's go back to our presentation and let's talk about some of the sections on the screen that we're seeing here. The core reviewer interface is where reviewers view and interact with the documents in their workspaces. Within the core reviewer interface, reviewers may display the documents in various formats, save coding decisions, apply redactions, and more. The core review interface has 9 main sections. So first, we have the Relativity viewer, and this viewer displays the workspace documents, and with this viewer you have several different options for how you want to display them. You can see those options listed for you at the top of the screen there. Currently we're in viewer mode. This displays an HTML rendering of the document that is as close to the original version of the document as possible. So this is hopefully what the document will look like in its native application. Next to that, we have the native option. And if a native file has been loaded for this document, this will actually open the document in that native application. So for example, if this was an Excel file and we chose native, it would open it up in Microsoft Excel. Image mode lets us see any image files that we have for this document. So this is where we could view any TIFFs or any JPEGs of this document. And this is where we'll be able to do things like put redactions on top of the document. Finally, we have our long text viewer mode. Right now you can see that it has extracted text selected. This lets us view the contents of any long text field for this document. Most typically you'll use extracted text for this, but this is also where you could see, say, the OCR text of a document. Now, I should point out that a radio button will only be present if that mode exists for that particular document. So for example, if there was no image on file for this document, the image mode radio button would not be available. Now, beneath the document view selectors are the viewer and long text tools. These tools help you to analyze a document. For example, you could use the magnification tool to zoom in and out of a document. That's what you're seeing right here. The Find Previous and Find Next section allows you to find the previous and next instance of a particular entered term or phrase. We also have the Show Hide Persistent Highlight Sets tool and the Go to Next and Go to Previous Highlights tool. We're going to talk about these in a bit more detail shortly. To more easily move through the documents that have been loaded into the viewer, you have the navigation bar over there on the top right of the screen. This is very similar to the navigation bar that we had when we were looking at the document list. Clicking the single forward or single backwards arrow will let you go back and forth between the documents. And we also have a jump to last and a jump to first arrow, and that will do just as it says. We'll jump you to the last loaded document or to the first loaded document. If there was a specific document that you wanted to view and you knew which number in the list that it was, you could actually type in this box here, say the number 427, and it would actually jump you straight to that document. The last tools I want to point out are the interface toggle options. You can see them highlighted for you up there in the top right. Using these toggle options, you can customize how you access, view, and code documents by clicking the icons in the upper right corner of the core reviewer interface. You have tools like the keyboard shortcuts legend, docking and undocking the viewer, swapping viewer panes, show hiding the tab strip, and showing and hiding the document list, and the ability to launch a standalone viewer if you want to view 2 documents simultaneously. Now that you're familiar with how to navigate the core reviewer interface, Let's discuss the tools that you'll use to actually code your documents. And these are these sections of the screen that you're seeing here. So this brings us to Module 5, Coding Your Documents. In this module, we're going to look at all of the relativity tools that we'll use to actually code, tag, and highlight our documents. First, we're going to discuss persistent highlights and coding layouts. Then we'll look at the related items panes and how to deploy a document skip workflow using propagation. Let's dive in. Looking at our core reviewer interface again, notice in the viewer that there are some terms that are highlighted, such as Bloomberg and power. These terms are called persistent highlights. Prior to a review, your case manager may receive a list of terms that are important to the case. To ensure that documents containing these terms are reviewed closely, your manager might set up a persistent highlight set containing those terms, which will ultimately help you make your coding decision. For example, if documents containing the word electricity have a high probability of being responsive, your case manager could create a persistent highlight set that highlights every instance of the word electricity in a document. Once you're ready to enter your coding decision, you'll use the coding layout over on the right. The coding layout is where you'll enter various coding values, such as whether the document is responsive or privileged, or potentially to mark it for different issues pertaining to the case, whatever the pieces of information that you need to code are. Now, you may have access to numerous different coding layouts that are configured to serve different purposes. The layouts that you can see are dependent on your security permissions and your role. So your case admin will also determine which fields that you actually can see on the layout and whether you have access to edit or just to view those fields. Let's go into Relativity now and see how those features work. Here we are in the core reviewer interface and reviewing that document that we opened previously. Let's start off by taking a look at some of those persistent highlight sets that we have available to us. So I'm going to click the Show Hide Persistent Highlight Sets icon. Highlight sets can be switched on and off using the light bulbs here. So for example, if I click on the Key Terms light bulb, you'll see that those terms that are being highlighted in this set will turn off. And if I click on it again, they will turn back on. To navigate through the highlighted terms here, if I use the Go to Next and Go to Previous arrows, you can see that the system will actually jump to the different highlighted terms. This can be very useful if it's a very large document. It can allow me to quickly jump to those sections that might be most relevant based on the presence of these key terms to the case. So let's say that based on the highlighted terms here, we feel like this is a document that's relevant to the case. So let's apply the correct coding decision. You'll notice that the first pass review layout, where I've been instructed to make this decision, is already selected for us here. So I'll just click Edit. This document contains the words California and the words power as indicated by those highlight sets there. So let's say it's responsive. So I'm going to click the responsive option here. Right now I'm only checking this document for responsiveness, so I'm not going to worry about these issues or privilege fields right now. I'm going to instead move on to the next document in my case. So I'll click Save and Next. Now I'm in my next document and the layout is still open, allowing me to make my coding decision here. Now this document is also responsive because it does in fact contain some of the same key terms that we've decided are responsive. So I could just call this document responsive the same as I did before, but I also have the option to copy from previous. So if I click this Copy from Previous button, you can see that it actually pulled in that previous value and marked this document responsive. Now let's say that we also want to do a little bit of issue coding on this document right now. So let's say that this pertains to shady investments. So we'll choose that issue here. And I'll click Save. All right, so we've just seen how to do a simple review of documents. Let's take it up another level and start talking about working with the related items of documents. Related items are groups of documents that are linked together due to their relationship with one another. For example, duplicate documents can be set as a relational item, or an email and its attachments could be grouped together as a relational family. If a document has related items, you'll be able to view them in the Related Items pane. Related items are connected by a special type of field called a relational field. If a document has related items, you'll be able to view them in the Related Items pane that you can see down here on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. To view a document's relational items, click on one of the related item icons to open the related items pane for that particular group of items. So you can see a couple that we have down here. So some common types that you might encounter are email family groups, duplicate documents, email thread groups, and documents that have been identified as near duplicates of each other. Now, not all documents will have each or any of these relational items, but in case you see any of them, now you'll have a better understanding of what those mean. The concept behind relational items, such as duplicates, is the same across all workspaces, but the exact names and the exact icon used to represent those groups might vary. So in one workspace, for example, this icon here might mean an email and its attachments, but in another workspace, this might mean an email thread. So the concepts are the same, but different administrators might set up cases differently. So the question then is, how do I ensure that a coding decision that I make on a document is also applied to those documents' related items? For example, if I code a document as responsive, I would expect that any duplicates of that document would also be responsive. The answer for how we make sure that those related items are coded together is what we call propagation and document skip workflow. So propagation and document skip can help enhance your review by allowing you to code documents more efficiently and making sure that related items stay together and have the same coding information. Document skip uses propagation, which automatically forces a coding value to a specific group of related items. Propagation is a function that works in tandem thus with document skip and needs to be set up by your case administrator. When it's enabled, document skip removes from the review queue any documents after the current one that don't meet the view or saved search criteria. Let's look at how propagation and document skip work with related items. For example, let's say that propagation has been turned on for family. When we code a parent document as responsive, all of those documents' attachments are also coded as responsive, which is what you can see here. Now, because those documents were coded as responsive, they are thus removed from your queue of documents to remove. And you are then skipped to the next uncoded document in the queue. So this is especially helpful if you have multiple duplicate documents or many emails with attachments. I'll switch over to Relativity so you can see how this works in real time. The first thing I want to do is show how propagation works without the document skip workflow on, and then I'll turn it on and you'll be able to get a better sense of what's going on when we use these. So I'm going to return to the document list. From there, I'm going to switch back to the All Documents view. Now from this list, I'm going to open document EN3. And in the bottom right, I'm going to go to my related items pane and I'm going to open up the duplicates. You can see if I mouse over it, it says that this is showing me the duplicates. We can see here that this document has 4 duplicates that have been identified for it. And you can see all of them there in that related items pane. Now, because propagation has been turned on, if I code the document that I'm looking at right now as responsive, all of those duplicates are going to automatically get coded responsive. So let's see that in action. So I'm going to open up the layout. I'm going to code it as responsive. Now, before I save this coding decision, note that there is nothing listed in the responsiveness column for any of these documents right now. Now I'm going to click Save. I have now saved this responsiveness value, and if I refresh my browser real fast, just like magic, you can see that all of the documents, not just the one that I'm looking at, are now all coded as responsive. So you can see here, I ensured that all these duplicates have the same coding value, and I saved myself the bother of having to open up each of them individually, see that it's a duplicate, and code that document as responsive. Now, at this point, if I go to my next document, notice that this is document EN4. This is a duplicate of the previous one, but hey, I already coded this one responsive thanks to propagation earlier. So obviously I could just keep clicking the next button until I got to the next uncoded document, but here's where that document skip in combination with propagation can really help us with our efficiency here. Let's see how document skip can help us here. I'm going to return to the document list again, and I'm going to click the view bar. and I can see that a document skip view has already been set up for me. This view is configured to show us the documents from our checked out batch that have not yet been coded. So as soon as a document is coded, it will fall off of this list. So let's open up the first document. Now notice that we're starting at document EN5 because, of course, ENs 1, 2, 3, and 4 are documents that we coded in previous exercises. Now you can see the related item pane stays open because the system remembered that I had it open previously. And you can see that we have some duplicates here. So now, same as before, I'm going to code this document responsive, but I also don't want to have to go through the bother of clicking through to each new document that has now already been coded via propagation. So to code this document, we're going to use skip mode. So I'm going to turn edit mode on for our layout. Now notice at the bottom of the layout right here, we have this drop down that says normal. If I click that, you can see we have skip. So let me choose that. Now I'm going to code this document as responsive. Now before I go, note that we are on document number 1 in our review queue. But when I go to save and next, notice the document that we're going to get jumped to. You would expect that we'd go to document 2, but we actually went to document 3 because the system detected that, thanks to propagation, document number 2 in our queue was now already coded. Since it's already coded, that means it should drop off the list, and thus the system says, oh, okay, well, then I'm not going to even show that one to you, even though I loaded it previously. I'm just going to jump right over to the next one. And now in the same fashion, we could go here and we could code this one responsive, and this would jump us over any documents that now have that coding information. And using this, our review efficiency can be much higher because we are both not having to look at duplicate documents of each other, and we don't even have to have the bother of clicking past them. Now that we've finished talking about related items and how to work with them, let's start talking about how to deal with email thread groups and some ways that we have to deal with them more efficiently. So let's begin Module 6, Visualizing Email Threads. An email thread is a single email conversation that starts with an original email and then includes all the subsequent replies and forwards and reply alls and so on pertaining to that original email. In Relativity, your case admin might opt to run our email threading operation over the dataset, which will result in entire email conversations being identified and then arranged in sequential order. This process helps to reduce the time and complexity of reviewing emails by making sure that all components of the email thread are arranged together for your review. When it comes to reviewing these thread groups, we also offer a few tools to help you understand and then to more efficiently code those email threads. In this module, we're going to look at those tools that will be available to you, but it's important to note that these are only going to be available if your case administrator has enabled and run email threading in your environment. So these tools include the email threading view, the related items thread view, and email thread visualization. Starting in the case workspace interface, the first tool that we'll talk about is the email threading view. This view should be set up by your case admins prior to review, and keep in mind that the naming convention for this view and for these fields might be slightly different in your workspace. So once this view is selected, the documents will be sorted into their respective email threads, and each thread will be separated by this thick blue line like you're seeing down here between numbers 13 and 14 here. For each thread, Relativity provides visual information for you to quickly understand the activity that occurred in that thread. And this is what's called the email threading display. First, we have these square indentation bubbles. These bubbles indicate each email's level within the conversation. For example, the first email in the chain would be marked with a 1, an email responding to the first email would be a 2, an email responding to the second email will be a 3, an email responding to the third email will be 4. If the conversation was to branch at a certain point, you would have multiple emails at the same level. So for example, you can see here that we have 3 emails at level 2, we have 4 emails at level 3, and that's indicating that the conversation branched at those levels. Now the color of the indentation bubble indicates the inclusiveness of the email. An inclusive email contains the unique content that's not included within any other email in the thread. For example, the last email in a particular branch of the conversation or within the entire conversation is inclusive because it contains that last message that is not contained within the text of any other message. Another example of a reason something might be inclusive would be if it has an attachment that no other email in the thread has. That attachment makes that particular email inclusive because now, thanks to that attachment, it has information within it that other emails in the thread do not have. The nice thing with emails being marked inclusive is that if you review only the inclusive emails, you can be sure that you viewed all of the unique authored content within that email thread. This will then save you time because you don't have to review those non-inclusive emails because you know that any information within them was contained in the inclusive ones that you already looked at. Now, the color of the indentation bubble for an inclusive email, as you can see, is solid black, and it will be empty and white if it is a non-inclusive email, letting you quickly visually see which ones are inclusive. Beyond just their level in the conversation and inclusiveness, these indentation bubbles include other pieces of information about what was happening in that particular email. So you'll notice that an email that was just sent, there'll be no icon there. If an email has a little just one little arrow there, it's a reply. A couple arrows stacked on top of each other, you can see it's a reply all. Forwards will be marked. If there's a little pencil there, you can know that that email was a draft, so it wasn't sent. And then if there's a little paper icon on them, you can know that there was an attachment on that email. So what you can see is that using the email threading display, I can very quickly get a sense of what was going on in this conversation without even actually looking at any of the emails themselves. I can see which emails are inclusive, so these are the ones that I'm going to look at. I can see what the actions that were taken on these different emails were. I can see that these conversations started to branch at some of these levels here. So I can really quickly see what's going on in this thread here just by looking at this email threading display. Now, if we move into the core reviewer interface, just like we had a related items group for duplicates, we also have a related items group if the threading operation has been run to show the thread group. This is basically a replica of what you were seeing when we were looking at the email threading list view there. So you can see here we have those same indentation bubbles, we have those same action icons, and so on. One of the nice things with this is that just like with other related item groups, I can actually click the different emails that are listed here in the thread group, and that will actually open those emails right in the core review interface. And finally, we have email thread visualization. This is available to you in Relativity 9.5, and this will show you a visual representation of this email thread. This is useful because it lets you see visually what actually happened here. So I can see, whereas on that list I knew that the conversation at the third level branched into 4 different emails, here I can actually see that, and I can get a sense of where those branches happened and what else was going on with them. You can also see where emails that have been identified as missing are. So you can see here that the system has marked us as missing some emails here. This happens if the system identifies text in one of these other emails that does not correspond to any other document in the workspace. And this can happen if, say, the custodian of these particular emails was not one of the custodians that you collected from. You can also click the different nodes here in the visualization that will jump right to those emails and open them in the viewer, so you can kind of quickly navigate around the email thread. And you can see the same kind of visual information that you saw previously. So I can see inclusiveness, I can see what's not inclusive, I can see where attachments are, and so on. Let's jump into Relativity and take a look at these tools in action, and we can see how this will really help us review these email threads. I've returned us to Relativity Home mode, and I'm going to open this other workspace here, Pepper vs. Salt, which has been enabled for email thread visualization. Now, when we open up that workspace, notice that the view that opens by default is that email threading view, and you can see all that information that we were talking about before, like the email threading display here. So I'm going to begin our review. I'm going to scroll down and open up the first email in the second thread here. You can see that this email opens in the core review interface just as before, but let's use those email threading tools to help us review this document. So I'm going to click the Show Hide Email Thread Visualization button, which is this little guide down here at the bottom of the screen. Once it's opened, I can see the structure of the current email thread that I'm viewing. You can see the thread is laid out from left to right, with the earliest emails appearing on the left. And you can see that the conversation continued on pretty normally up until the third node, at which point it branched here into this email down here. Kept going to the fourth node where it branched 3 times, and we ended up with 3 different branches here in the fourth node. Now notice that the current email that we have selected is outlined in gray right here. And when I hover over it, you can see that a tooltip display is showing me some additional information about this email. So I can see who it was from, the sent date. If it had any attachments, I could navigate to them here. It does not. And if it had any duplicate spares, I could navigate to them here, but again, it does not. I have the ability to zoom in and out on the thread here. Depending on the size of the thread, this might help you to kind of zoom in on a particular section or to zoom out and get a more holistic view of the entire thing. And if I end up way out like this, I can click the reset zoom button and it will return me to this default zoom here. You can see over on the right that I have a legend, which is showing me what these different icons mean. And I can collapse that if I want to see more of the visualization, or I can pop that back out here. And now, just as on the previous screen, to a black square, of course, means inclusive. A white square is non-inclusive. Any missing emails will be rendered. Any duplicate spares or attachments will also be indicated here. You can also see that each of these nodes has the same email action icon that we had when we were looking at the previous screen. I can also open up any of these emails in the thread by simply clicking on them, and that will pop it open in the viewer. If I click on this one, it will open that one up. Or I could return to that first one there and see that one in the viewer again. And then, just as when we were looking at our documents before, over here we have our coding layout. So in the exact same way that we were looking at documents previously, we could make coding decisions here using the layout. Another powerful feature of email thread visualization is the ability to apply a highlight field that will let us visually see the coding information in this thread here. So to enable this, I'm going to click Display Options down here, and I'm going to turn on Highlight Field. You can see that the colors in our thread already start to change. And then from this drop down here, I can choose any single choice or yes/no field to highlight in the email thread display. So let's choose the responsive designation field. So I'm going to scroll down and choose responsive designation. And if I bring up the legend again, you can see that now we're also, in addition to seeing inclusiveness and non-inclusiveness, we can also see which documents have been marked as non-responsive, which ones are responsive, and which ones have not been coded yet. So looking at our email thread here, we can see that most of the emails have been marked as responsive, as indicated by the yellow highlighting. But we have one email here that has been marked as non-responsive, and we have one email down here that is not set, or has not been reviewed yet. So now I can quickly see that we have a potential issue here, right? If all these other emails are responsive, we might expect that this email is responsive too. So we might want to tag this email to be reviewed and have this potential inconsistency cleared up. And of course, we also have this one random responsive email in this thread that's not been looked at. We'll probably want to get that sorted out too, since the rest of the thread has been reviewed as well. Now, I'm not limited just to responsiveness, of course. If I go back to display options, I can choose, say, my privilege designation. And you can see again that we have some of these emails and some of these side branches that have been marked as privileged, but we have these emails in the main branch here that have not been coded for any privilege. So let's imagine that upon further review, we decide that all the items in this thread should be marked as privileged. Now, I could just open each email up individually and mark them as privileged, but one of the very nice things about email thread visualization is I can actually mass tag items right from within this visualization pane. So to do that, I'm going to click the mass edit icon. When I do that, the behavior of the visualization changes. Now when I click on these items, it will select them. It won't jump to them. So I'll go ahead and select all of those items there. Now notice that when I select them, you can see a green circle with a number appears over each of them. That's indicating how many documents at that particular node are going to get affected. Each of these is a 1, indicating that only one document here is going to get affected. But if there was an attachment on any of these emails, this number would be a 2, or depending on the number of attachments, even beyond that. And those attachments would also be affected by any coding decision that you make here. So now I'm going to click Edit. This is going to bring up the mass edit screen, the exact same as the mass edit screen that I would see if I was mass editing from the document list. And I will choose the same privilege designation that the other emails in the thread had. And I'll click Save. And you can see that the legend updates, and now we can see that all of these emails have been coded as being privileged, so we've resolved that particular inconsistency there. All right, for our last module, we're going to discuss applying redactions. Depending on your responsibilities as a reviewer, you may be tasked with redacting and highlighting information in your documents. In this module, we'll be discussing the image viewer, markup sets, and the various types of redactions and highlights that you have at your disposal. First things first, let's talk about where in Relativity you go to apply redactions. Now remember earlier when we covered the different types of viewer modes in the core reviewer interface? One of those types that we discussed is the image viewer, and this is the mode that we're going to be using when we view and interact with our redactions on our documents. Now as we mentioned, this mode button will only be available if there is an image available for this document. Once you're in image mode, you'll see a toolbar at the top of the viewer with a variety of icons. And these icons are essentially everything that you need to mark up, highlight, and redact your document. We'll dive into these different icons during our demo. At the bottom of the image viewer, there is a drop-down. This drop-down is called the Markup Set Selector. Markup sets are sets of redactions and highlights created by your case administrators as a place to store all your markups together. Later, if your case admin wants to grab documents that were redacted for, say, confidential information, they can quickly do so by referencing that confidential markup set. As such, it's important that when you apply markups, you always ensure you have selected the correct markup set from this drop-down menu. So let's jump into Relativity again, and we will apply some redactions to some documents. Now for this demo, I'm going to return us to the salt versus pepper workspace. The first thing that I'll do here, now that I've returned to this workspace, is I'm going to switch us to the Needs Redactions view. This is a view that the case admins have set up for us to pull back documents that have been marked responsive, but also contain potentially privileged information. All right, now I'm going to open up the first document on the list here. The document opens just as we've seen before. So the first thing that we'll do, as per our previous discussion, is we need to switch this from viewer mode to image mode. And notice that when I do this, the toolbar and the options that we have here is going to change. So our toolbar has updated to give us the different options that we have now that we're in image mode. Let's talk about a few of these that we have here. So first is the thumbnail icon. If this document has more than one page, you can click this icon and it will display all the pages in this document. And from here, you can actually quickly jump between the different pages of this document. Next up are the zoom icons, which lets you zoom in and out of this document. After those options, you have our various options for placing redactions and then for printing a PDF of this document. Let's add some of these redactions now. Before I begin, as we discussed before, we want to make sure that we're using the correct markup set. Since I know that we are redacting privileged information, we're going to select the markup set we've been told to use for that, and that is the attorney markup set. So I'm going to switch us to that. Now I'm going to go and click the redactions icon, and let's place a text redaction. So I will choose the text option here. To apply this redaction, I just click and drag my mouse over the area that I would like to redact. Now, once it's in place, I have the option to move or to resize it as needed. If I want to remove it, I can easily do that either by right-clicking and choosing Delete, or with it selected, I can click the Delete button on my keyboard, and that will give me the option to delete it as well. In addition to applying redaction boxes and highlights, you also have the option to do what's called an inverse redaction and full page redactions. So for an inverse redaction, it works just like a normal redaction but in reverse. Rather than choosing an area of the screen to block out, I'm going to choose an area of the screen to keep open, and then the rest of the screen will get blocked out. Let's see what that looks like. So let's choose a black redaction, and I'm going to switch it to the inverse option. And now when I choose an area, let me resize it here. you'll see that the screen has a white section around the area that I chose, and the rest of it is in blue. That's indicating that this area right here is going to remain unredacted, while all the rest of this stuff is going to get redacted. So once I choose the right area, I just click the icon again, and just like that, you can see that we now have a window here with just one area revealed and the whole rest of the page redacted away. I'm going to go ahead and delete that now. And then for a full page redaction, you just simply click the full page option here. So all I have to do is choose the type of redaction that I want to do a full page redaction on. Let's choose a cross redaction, let's say. And it just instantly redacts away the entire page with the redaction that I chose. Let's go ahead and delete that one as well. Let's go to the next document. Now you'll notice that this document already has a few redactions and highlights that have already been placed on this document here. Let's look at a few ways that we have to interact with these redactions now. So the first thing that we'll talk about is the changing markup visibility option. You can see this icon right here, and if I click that, you can see what happened here is it made the markup sort of transparent. So I can see where the markup is, but I can also now see the text that's underneath it. This is useful if an attorney wants to review the information that's been redacted and make sure that it's in fact appropriately privileged information and the redactions are correct. Now, just as a note, if I was to save and print this document, it would print in this fashion. It would print with the markup in this form here, where you can see underneath the markup. If I click it again, the third option, it will just hide all of those redactions, so I don't see any of them at all. And then if I click it again, it returns them to their normal state. Now, another option that we have to help us take a look at our redactions is the markup navigation pane. So let me open that right now. So when I click this icon, you can see that it opens up another pane in the same place that that email thread visualization pane was. And this pane is showing me the locations and the types of all the different markups in this document. What's really nice too is that I can actually jump straight to them. So you can see right here I have a redaction on the second page, and if I click this, it actually jumps me straight to that redaction. So this can be very useful if you have a very long document that has just a few redactions on a couple of different pages. Rather than having to try and scroll through the document and find them, you can just open the markup navigation pane, quickly see where those redactions are, and quickly jump right to them and interact with them as needed. And that completes our quick overview of applying redactions to documents. And that brings us to the end of our webinar today. You saw a nice overview of some of our review functionality in Relativity and should have a better sense now of how Relativity can aid you in your review workflows. Thanks for joining us.